Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and I have got the best guest today. I'm so excited. We have with us today Kathy Bryan, who is the mom of Bob and Mike Bryan, #1 doubles team in the world. And you guys know her husband Wayne well. He's been on the show a few times, and I've posted gobs and gobs of stuff that he's written about tennis. But we rarely get to hear from Kathy, and I'm so excited that she agreed to come on today and share her experiences as a tennis parent and raising these amazing men that she's raised to be #1 in the world. But it goes way beyond tennis, and I know once I get her on air, she'll share that with us, and we have a lot to learn from her. Before I bring Kathy on the air, though, I want to just remind you guys of a couple things. One, we are still taking nominations for our Best Tournament Director Award, and so I hope that you will all go on to ParentingAces.com and nominate your favorite tournament director. I think this is a great opportunity to recognize and honor those people who are doing a great job out there for our kids, and I'm really hopeful to be able to showcase as many of the good ones as possible. So please take a few minutes and submit your nominations for that. Also, we have a Stop Sports Injuries pledge on the bottom of ParentingAces.com, and I hope all of you will take that pledge. It's a digital thing you do. It takes about 10 seconds if you just click on the link on the bottom of Parenting Aces. And please share that with your child's coach as well. I think it's really important that we all get on board with making sure our kids are safe on court, at their practices, at their tournaments, at practice matches, at school matches, at team matches, all of that. So please take a couple minutes and take a peek at stopsportsinjuries.org. To that end, I'm going to play a quick commercial, and when we come back, Kathy Bryan.
Warning. Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to Parenting Aces and our show with Kathy Bryan. Kathy, are you there?
I am. It's great to be with you, Lisa.
Thank you so much. And I am just so looking forward to picking your brain for the next little bit about what it's like raising these two amazing men. And I know they were your baby boys at one point, but they're grown-ups now and have accomplished so incredibly much, not just on the court, but off the court as well. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
So let's just jump in with an obvious question first, which is, what was it like having twin boys?
Well, it was shocking to hear initially that we were having twins, because we were going to just dabble in parenthood with one at a time. But we had neighbors that assured us that they had twins, and they assured us that it would be a lot of fun eventually, but it was tremendous amount of work for the first 2 years, and I was still giving lessons at the club and trying to juggle everything. But we've found a lot of benefits, a lot of pluses to having twins, and it became just a real blast to watch twins developing together. So it's been a blessing, but a lot of work in the beginning.
Sure. I remember seeing a couple years ago a 60 Minutes piece on them, and tracking their movement and their kind of quirky habits and things, and all the similarities. And it must have been so much fun for you guys to watch them coming up.
It really was. Even, under a year, you start seeing them interact with each other. And it just was fun to watch them and listen to them speak to each other. And they did have their own language going there for a while, even into grade school, and the teachers had a little trouble understanding them. And I even had, on occasion, a little trouble understanding them. But that all worked out, fortunately. And, we've always just had to make sure that if one was getting something a little earlier, they were learning how to do something a little faster, we tried to step in and help the other one catch up. So we tried to keep it in line, and we tried to really not look upon them as twins, even from the very beginning. We encouraged their individuality, and we never called them twins. Other people would, but we always just referred to them as Bob and Mike and brothers. And we wanted them to always be, supportive of each other and not competitive in an unhealthy way. They did push each other along quite well, which was really great. It's a nice dynamic to have. They pushed each other forward. When one learned something, the other one definitely wanted to learn it too in record time. But we, really wanted them to feel that their brother was their best friend and supporting each other. So I'm sure you've read that we didn't have them compete against each other in tournaments and so forth. So whenever they met each other in a draw in a tournament, we had them default. One of them, they'd alternate, one would default to the other. So we always tried to promote, them being good buddies and not labeling one as, better at something or more outgoing, or because people always with twins, they want to say, well, who's the smartest, who's the best tennis player, who's the the most friendly, and so forth. And we really steered away from that as much as possible.
Well, I want to come back to the whole issue of not letting them play each other in tournaments, but before we get there, I do want to ask you, at what point did you and Wayne decide that you were going to introduce them to tennis and, really kind of steer them toward the game?
Well, you'd probably get a different answer from Wayne, but I'll just give it from my perspective. They were always around it. We were, owners of part owners of a tennis club and the coaches. So they were literally in our teaching baskets while we gave lessons when they were, about 1 year old. So they were always exposed to it. And Wayne and I, just really wanted to lay the table for them to, and I think just by being teaching pros, they certainly saw that we were very involved and very enthusiastic about the sport, but also they saw that we were very busy. So we didn't have the ability to really push them into anything because our time was so short, crucial. So they had to really pull on our shirt to be able to get us out on the court to work with them because we had just a day full of lessons. So it seemed like a privilege to them to get us out on the court with them individually. And so I don't think they ever felt pushed or steered. They were just in our world, and they loved the world because we had lots of kids around us too. We had the clinics, and we had a huge junior program, and they were little guys, and they wanted to be part of that junior program. So they were really, looking for any opportunity to be a part of the big picture that we were, involved in at the club. So I was never really conscious of steering or pushing. Now, other parents that might not be in our circumstances, I think it's just exposing kids early and showing them the fun of it by taking them to all kinds of matches, college and high school and so just enjoying it yourself, I think. My parents enjoyed tennis so much, and that's the reason I hung out at the club and played tennis. So I think so much is just seeing parents enjoy the world and enjoy the game themselves.
Sure. It's funny, I just read an article about delusional parent disorder in youth sports, and I thought it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but not really. There's so many parents out there who feel like their child has the it factor to make it to the top of the game. Obviously, your sons do have that, and I'm wondering if you can share with us when you and Wayne first realized that, hey, these guys have something special, and we really need to foster that, and we need to figure out how to keep them interested, keep them wanting to work, and yet keep it fun and, lighthearted when that's appropriate too.
Right. I would say when they were 6 and they won their first tournament, Lindero Oaks, we saw, a focus on the court, a drive, and also an ability that made us feel like, they can do really well in this sport. But there were lots of kids, and they were very small for their age. And there were a lot of kids that were their age, that were bigger, that, would beat them pretty handily, too, along the way. I mean, they really didn't get their full growth until college. So we were always very conscious that, they were fighters, they were scrappy, they were talented, but we saw so many other scrappy, talented, and stronger players out there too. So it kept us very humble. So I know in our minds we never looked that far in advance. We were really, when we were in the 10s, we were fully in the 10s. We weren't thinking, where's the 10s leading us to the, the 16s and so forth, and then on to college. I mean, we were so involved in the moment, trying to do our best against whatever competition was there at the moment, and but they were showing promise because they were surprising us. They were having better results than we really expected them to have. And I'd say, Wayne and I have talked about that. That was kind of the hallmark for them throughout their career. They've always done better than we really expected them to do. And I've seen, even with my students and Wayne's students that we've had, the ones that do well, they surprise us constantly. They just surprise us with their results. And I think that's kind of an indication that they're a little precocious in the sense for their size and for their age. They're moving forward. Not that, every kid has a certain developmental, speed, but Mike and Bob were doing really well being so small and young. We really didn't change anything. They were just part of the program that we had for all the kids at the club. So we let it evolve very naturally. We made sure that they were getting a lot of successes before moving on to the next step. We didn't try to rush that at all. So they weren't ones to play up in the next division. We believed in a real foundation for them, and playing under pressure, playing a lot of people that we felt they probably should beat at that point. So they got used to pressure, because a lot of kids will play up. And yes, they're playing tougher kids, and that might push them forward, but they also are, nothing's really expected of them, so they don't have the pressure. And I think that's one of the reasons why Mike and Bob have done well holding that number one position in the world for a while, is because they're used to pressure, and so they're used to maintaining their position and moving forward. And I think that's a really key thing for parents to realize. I've talked to a lot of parents. They want their kids to kind of rush along. And we believe in a lot of great, results before moving forward. And it kind of just evolves naturally, making sure you're winning your matches at your club. Then you move into your community. And then you move into your area, Southern California, or wherever it may be, and then you just naturally, will go into Northern and Southern California and on to maybe a few nationals, but doing it very incrementally and seeing how your kid is feeling confidence-wise, how much they're enjoying it, if you're getting, always trying to relieve the pressure from them too, because most kids, especially if they love it, they're going to put a lot of pressure on themselves. So making sure they get a lot of good wins under their belts, it gives them a nice foundation of self-esteem. So that's what we believe, very small incremental steps forward, even if they're showing a remarkable, talent. Take it slow.
Interesting. And you guys, you introduced music to them. They're both very accomplished musicians, and we'll talk about that a little more too. What are some of the other things that you guys expose them to kind of take the focus off the tennis all the time? Because when you're a tennis player, both parents are tennis coaches. I mean, holy cow, you're living, breathing, eating tennis 24/7. You got to get away from it somehow.
Absolutely. We were big believers in that. For ourselves, too. That, yes, the music was a huge, and still is a huge part of our lives. We did loads of things with the kids at the club. We really believed in raising Mike and Bob as a group. I think within a group, a fun group, as opposed to just parent-child going to tournaments together exclusively. We really wanted them to be part of this, pack of kids that supported each other, and then it also puts things in perspective. Kids don't get all wrapped up in each other's results really that much. You come off the court and they want to run off and do something together, find the nearest place to go play. So it takes away the intensity between the parent and the child if you encourage groups, go to tournaments in groups. And we always, when they came off the court, we go. This was my job. I mean, we went sightseeing so often. If we went to San Antonio, we'd go to the Riverwalk, or we'd go, off to the Alamo, or I just found out where the cool places were to go see. And so it became fun. It became educational. and they knew that we were always more interested as who they were as full person than who they were just as results on a tennis court. And of course, there's studies were always a big part too. So their education, because they knew that if they wanted to play at a top college, they had to have the grades to go with it. So it was many pronged, but I think the large group of kids having that fun element just built in with, and they supported each other at the tournaments, which was cool too. And then they learned to support others, not just see the game through their own results, but reach out to others and see how they're doing, and then enjoying other things wherever you travel. Just get out and see the sights, and I just make it educational if you can too, and there's just, it can be so rich, this experience, if you just get away from results. It's a real great time to bond with your kids too, because you're sharing the travel, you're sharing even the highs and lows. I think can be very healthy to see how you work through these highs and lows. Nobody's had such lows. If you look at all the top players, they can tell you harrowing tales of disappointments. I mean, just harrowing tales. But they've risen above it and they've moved forward. And I think resiliency is that parents can teach kids, put things in perspective, and resiliency is and taking pressure away from a kid rather than building pressure on a kid can get that longevity.
That's great. So it's interesting because, you read stuff about the different professional players and how they came up through the game, and there aren't a lot of twins to look to.
Right.
But we have the Williams sisters still competing and, for the game. And so I guess, maybe they're the closest thing to the Bryan brothers in terms of, siblings close in age, coming up through the sport together. And when you look at Serena and Venus and they're coming up through tennis, they did play each other all the time in tournaments. They met each other in the final or the semis or whatever. And
I think this was more in the pros because they really didn't play many junior tournaments.
Right.
Right, and Mike and Bob played each other in the pros, but we wanted to make sure that they were solid enough, they had that foundation in the beginning, because we had been at the club and we had seen so many instances before we even had children where one sibling would start beating the other sibling, and inevitably it seemed the sibling that was losing would quit the game because they just couldn't handle having somebody in their own family beating them pretty consistently. But once they got into the pros, we felt that they were strong enough in their own sense of self to be able to handle that. Also because it's not allowed in the pros anymore. Juniors, they let us do that for a certain period of time, but the pros won't go for that.
Right.
So I think Venus and Serena, they just didn't compete against each other that I remember in the juniors, but definitely in the pros. Yeah, and it's still tough. I mean, they talk about it. It's their least favorite thing to do, I think.
Right. And for me, watching your sons play doubles together, there is such a joy between the two of them on the court. And I mean, speaking as a parent, I can't imagine anything greater than, seeing your children derive such joy from each other and from an activity that they're doing together. And obviously they've had such incredible success, but even the matches they've lost, they still seem to find a way to find the joy. And that speaks so highly to the way you and Wayne have raised them.
Well, thank you. It hasn't always at all times been rosy and perfect. We have
good. I'm relieved.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've had some real moments where we had to address issues. I mean, big moments when they were juniors, and even in the pros. I mean, when Wayne and I haven't been out on the tour, in the earlier years, I mean, they had times where they took separate planes off to the next tournament because they just couldn't stand to see the other one, or they even had a few blows. I guess they've told us in the cab, leaving the tournament. And I mean, but the bottom line is, absolutely, they're each other's very best friends. It's like a good marriage. I mean, not every day is blissful and perfect, and they're in agreement, but they, through the years, have worked through a lot of tough times, huge disappointments with their results or with each other, or arguments off the court that came onto the court, because their lives in the last, 15 years have evolved in so many ways. So you're going to not be in step all the time. But they've learned, and I've even been kind of taken aback by it, how they really keep their composure on the court now, because I'd say 8 or so years ago, I could see it on the court, whether they were happy with each other or whether they were not. Now they've learned how to bring out the best in each other without getting on each other. And they have little techniques, and one is just not ever comment on the court. They say they just zip it up when they're on the court. They never comment like, why weren't you there for that ball that went right down the middle? Why, that was your ball, that kind of thing. They never say anything. So they have kind of hard and fast rules to try to keep them always on track. We used to get, after certain matches, we'd get text messages or phone calls from one or the other just berating, the play of the other. We don't get those phone calls at all anymore. In fact, I'm kind of impressed with they give each other a lot of latitude now. I mean, they're pretty complimentary of each other, even in the tough times. So they've matured, I guess, but they weren't always mature. That's for sure. There was one match back in the juniors. Well, Wayne and I will never forget this match. They were so mad at each other that they actually spitefully would miss balls so the other one just could see that they were going to bring the team down. They just literally tried to miss a ball. And they split sets, and Wayne said he had to take him behind the woodshed and talk to him. I never want to see that. We do not want to see that. And we have had woodshed moments where, be it sportsmanship or just general behavior on the court, we've had to talk, have some really heart-to-heart talks with him. And I even pulled Mike off the court one time when he was a junior. I waited until he was winning the match, but I pulled him off when he started winning the match because his behavior was so obnoxious. And I just said to him, if you have to play this game and behave like that to be good, then we're stopping the game right now. I mean, either you're going to have good behavior out there and sportsmanship, or we're stopping now. And he said, but I'm in the doubles. can I come back and play the doubles this afternoon? I said, only if you go back and apologize to the tournament director and your opponent. And he said, I'll do it. And so he went back and apologized, and he was able to play the doubles, and I got some really good behavior out of him for a long time out of that. But they have to know, that you feel you always care more about them as a person than as a tennis player, strictly as a tennis player. And Mike and Bob have learned through the years, too, going back to the doubles, that, they care more about their brother than anything, and they care about the results, though, too, and they know to get those good results, they have to mature and learn what works on the court and off the court, and not, just explode when things go wrong. And they've gotten amazingly good at it. I kind of compliment them at that now, how poised they are on the court through the good times and the bad times. So I guess if you stay in the sport long enough, you work it out.
That's a year, actually.
Yeah, but it hasn't all been blissful, Lisa, I'll tell you that.
That's so funny. Well, one of the other things that you guys have done so amazingly well is instill this sense of giving back. And Bob and Mike have a foundation, and I know you and Wayne are really involved with it, and they put on events, and they raise money, and they do clinics, and it's amazing to me that, because there's so few professional athletes that are visible in that element of giving back. There's a handful, but when you think of the number of professional athletes out there, and then you look to how many of them are truly doing something to give back either to their community or to the game that's afforded them the luxury of being able to give back, the number's quite small. So can you share how y'all first instilled that in them? Was it something that you decided as a couple was going to be part of your family dynamic, or was it something that just kind of naturally evolved and came about, or how did that happen?
I think it started with them growing up at the club where we were working and running tournaments also and doing charity events through the club and so forth. They saw, a bigger picture, not just as players. They saw what tournament directors, because we were tournament directors, the work that goes into putting a tournament on, from getting sponsors to, sending players out on the court they were able to see the bigger picture. They saw even draws being made, on our dining room table. We would be putting the draws together. So they always saw the work behind a tournament and respected that. And they saw charity events. We did so many kind of events that promoted the game. Even with Mexico, we had the Friendship Cup at our club, and they saw promotion and just a love of the game and wanting. But they've also seen too, and what they wanted so much as kids. They wanted, of course, autographs. So they never turned down an autograph ever. They used to pursue players for autographs, and so they really always seemed to see it from a kid's point of view, because they were, they love balls being hit up in the stands. They do that now because they've been the kid that wanted to grab that ball at such an early age, or that they were that kid who was at the side of the court when a player walked out, like Ricky Leach, and said some words to them right as they walked out onto the court, and it just melted them. so they still see it from the perspective. We talk about it all the time. The impact that they can have, especially being number one in the world with such a little amount of effort, they can make such a huge impact on one kid or on a lot of kids. And even Bob, which I really didn't encourage him to do this, but he was sitting down writing his essay for when he was applying to Stanford, and he wanted me to just check his essay for grammar and so forth, and I was reading it, and it was totally about what he wanted to do with tennis if he got good enough to change other kids' lives. And that kind of amazed me because I didn't know he was thinking about it that much at that point. So I think it's been started at the grassroots, but it's important for parents to have kids thank tournament directors, thank they normally thank the umpires, but ball boys, seeing what goes into a tournament and appreciating it, and also using whatever they can, even as high school players or as college players, seeing who's younger and trying to achieve what they have, and kind of reach out to them and talk to them and ask them what their aspirations are, and just use the whatever you have to reach out to others and help them along. And it makes you I just think the boys have enjoyed the game so much more that way, just seeing it on a bigger picture than just seeing it through their own individual lens. How fun is that? That's not that much fun. And we've seen it with, you're right, with some pros that the top pros, and I'm not going to mention any names in the negative, but I'll just give you one story.
Okay.
That was in Cincinnati, and for the first day, all the pros came out on the center court, and then they had this little girl who was probably 10 come out and sing the national anthem. And Wayne was the master of ceremony, and he interviewed the little girl after she sang an incredible anthem, and he said, "Now, who is your favorite player?" And she named a player and who was on the court, and that player did not react in any way. And as they were filing off the court, all the players were filing off, another player, a top player, went over, got down on his knees, and started talking with the little girl, and very animatedly, and just you could see her just lighting up. And I thought, wow, what a missed opportunity. The player that she talked about just totally lost there, while the other player saw a chance to reach out and touch somebody that way. And she'll talk about that, I'm sure, for the rest of her life. That one moment when that player just left the line, went over and talked to her, and then went back in the line and filed out. And I think, and we talk about that with the boys all the time, what other players are doing that are positive for the game, and what players are doing that are negative for the game. So we're always in conversation about it.
I think that's so awesome, and I have to tell you that the day we spent with you guys was, my son is still on cloud nine from that day, and
that's great to hear.
Well, it was, at first, it was this, oh my gosh, I'm going to be Mike Bryan's hitting partner. Holy cow! I hope I can keep up with him, and he was a little nervous about that, from the tennis angle. But once he got on the court and Mike helped him relax very quickly. You and Wayne helped him relax very quickly, and I hope Mike had a good workout. I know my son had.
Oh, he had a great workout. It was great.
Yeah, my son
I think it just Mike can relate to Morgan so easily. I mean, it doesn't seem that long ago, that he. I mean, it is now actually a long time, but that he was that age, and Morgan's such a good player too that it's not easy. It's not difficult to enjoy the workout, but Mike's been through situations, and I'm just thinking of another instance where he was called by a coach of a top player to please, if he would, warm his player up, and Mike was just, he was just so excited about it. And when he walked out on the court, the player, and it happened to be the player's birthday, so Mike walked out and he said, "Happy birthday," and the player didn't say a word, just ignored him completely, walked out on the court, and the coach said, "Great to have you here. Thanks for coming." And that top player never said a word to Mike the entire workout. So we talked about that too. Just an acknowledgement of Mike walking out on the court would have been nice. But right. You see so much when you're out there, and the last thing you want to do is be part of that kind of, behavior. And we saw too how when Mike and Bob came out on the tour, they were young and they were a little brash and they were small and so forth. And some players really welcomed them and kind of were lent a helping hand. And there were players that just felt they were far above these two little guys coming out on the tour, and understandably, and they were cold and standoffish, and you see all of that, and you just don't want to be a part of that. You want to help as much as possible those that are coming up, and it's good for the game. It's good for the ones that are helping too. I mean, it's just it's the only way to go in our book, and it makes the game so much more fun.
Sure.
And that's our primary thing is having fun. And when Morgan came over to the house and was playing music, that's as much fun for Mike as it is for Morgan. So it's all mutual.
Well, I told you that he's been playing his drums a ton since we got back from that trip. So he's not going to be just keeping the beat in the background next time. He's working on fills, and he's planning to make a little bit more of an impression. So.
Okay, I can't wait until next time. That'll be great.
Let's go back in time for just a minute, and can you talk a little bit about how you and Wayne worked to balance the time that the boys needed to have on the tennis court with their practicing their musical instruments, doing their schoolwork, having a social life, and the family time? I guess it's a little bit easier when everybody in the family is involved in the same activity, but
it is.
There's still challenges, and I'm sure they probably each had friends, that one of them was closer to than the other one, and so balancing those types of things. How did you, as parents, manage that? Because I think that's a huge challenge.
Well, it seemed like so much of it was built in because we did have the club where they were naturally social. So you had, I would pick up a group of kids, which Mike and Bob were included in, at the schools. I'd drive by and pick up Mike and Bob and take a group of kids to the club, and then I would give Mike and Bob private lessons, and then they'd jump into the clinics with Wayne later. So, and then we'd come home. There was no TV or video games or anything, and we'd have dinner, and a lot of times they would fall asleep right when we get home, because we get home, it was dark and they were tired, and they'd set the alarm, and both of them would get up and do their homework in the morning before school. And sometimes I'd help them a little bit with some of the work at night before they went to bed, but the vast amount of work was done in the morning because they were morning people. So that was a routine that was just built in. We never talked about practicing music. Music was just something we did. Wayne would, start jamming on the piano, and Mike and Bob would jump on the piano bench and start doing stuff too, and Wayne would teach him a little riff on the, and they'd just imitate it. That was always just a fun thing. We did have them in music lessons for a while, and we stopped because they weren't enjoying it. They saw they had to practice scales, they had to, practice for their next lesson, and they liked to just do it, to learn songs and just to be part of Wayne's band. They went to all the Wayne's, gigs. He loved it. They loved the band members. So that was just kind of built in. So the studies, the socialization, their friends were really the friends at the club. So our house was really the place where kids came to play croquet, they came to play music, it was just the second club away from the club. Wow. So what I'm saying is it really never seemed like a juggling thing for us, because this is just, it's the way both of us kind of lived our lives before the boys were born. We had all the kids over at our house. We went to all the tournaments. We talked to the kids about their studies. So we were in that routine with other kids before we had our own. So I know other parents, when they're working in particular, but I think practice is not a super positive word in my book. Whenever you mention it to a kid, I mean, they just enjoy the activity so much that that's what they want to do. I never said, okay, now guys, we're going to have a private lesson. When we got to the club, the boys literally would get me out on court 5 and say, let's go. And I'd put them through all kinds of games and, drills and so forth. And they'd only stop when the behavior wasn't good. And that's when I'd say, that's it, guys, I'm done. And I'd walk off the court, and they'd go, Mom, where are you going? Where are you going? I said, that's it. And so they were a little bit better the next day. But I never said, okay, guys, you got to practice now. Let's go down. I'm giving you a private lesson, and then you're going into the clinic. As long as it's fun and that's what they want to do, I think they're pushing you. You're feeling that, pulling you along. And if you're pulling them along, something isn't right there. I remember even we went up to see the family, and we're huge family people, and I think, they love their cousins and all of that. And so we thought, okay, we're taking the day off for Easter. We're away from the club. We're not doing anything tennis-wise. And they wanted to go out and do their drills and so forth. We had to go find some courts and do, because they said we were shirking. I'll never forget that. They said we were shirking. I said, what? We're taking a day off from the club. So I think that's a little, maybe extreme, but I think just to talk to the parents out there, you want to feel not you pushing them, but they're pulling you. And if they aren't, if that isn't what they want to do that day, then there's something not right with the program that they're in. And that's why we got them out of private lessons for the piano quickly, because we could see their interest really diminishing with the program they were in. Wonderful teacher, but bad program for them. And we are firm believers in have the fun now, not postponing fun. Have fun with what you're doing now, and moving, slowly but surely putting skills into it. But most kids, they just want to go out and hit a tennis ball. Just get the racket in my hand and hit that ball over the net and let me see him run around and so forth. And then slowly you introduce skills, but never lose that initial fun of hitting a ball with a racket. And almost every kid out there, I believe, if shown that in the healthy way, will continue that love of almost anything. I mean, kids are just so curious and enthusiastic and about just about anything if it's presented in a healthy way.
Well, I thought it was really interesting when Mike and my son were, playing music and they were talking about it. And by the way, as nervous as he was to hit with Mike, he was terrified to play music with him. Absolutely.
He didn't show it. That's what I got to give Morgan. He didn't show it on the court or at the drums. He has a real good calm demeanor about him.
Yeah, I don't know how he got through it, because that was overwhelmingly terrifying. But that said, once
good for him.
Once he got past that initial fear, and started, playing and having fun, and they were talking, and one of the things that Mike said to him was that he watches YouTube videos to learn how to play these various riffs, and and I saw, something kind of turn on in Morgan when hearing that, hey, I don't need drum lessons. I just need to get online and watch these guys do it and then copy them. That's easy enough. And
absolutely.
Sure enough, that's what he's been doing since we got back. And it's not a method of learning that I grew up with. I grew up in a home where, I had piano lessons, I had ballet lessons, I had voice lessons, I had acting lessons, I had tennis lessons, I had gymnastics lessons. Everything was very programmed. And, I think in the era that I grew up and where I was growing up, that was the norm. So, I think it's really cool that you guys figured out that kids don't need all of that programming. They just need the exposure and the opportunity to develop the love and the passion, and then the learning comes.
That's really true, Lisa. Especially when they're young, I think kids really learn through their eyes and not their ears. We've talked about that before, where kids learn through imitation rather than instruction. And especially when they see people enjoying what they're doing, they want to do it too. It looks like fun, so they want some of that fun. So so much is the presentation of it. If it looks like work, forget it. They don't want any part of it. So, if you feel, well, if you're going to practice an hour and a half every day, you're going to be good. Well, that just doesn't ring, in a positive way with a young kid, Right. But if that activity is presented in a fun way, they're going to jump on in. It's funny, Bob, one of my boys, he's starting to experience this with his 2.5-year-old, that he just went out yesterday and got a set of V drums. And he put them in the little music room they've set up. And he said, Michaela, come and play on the V drums. Let's play the drums. And she went, no, like that, and ran off into the other room. So Bob just went and had some dinner, and suddenly he's hearing the drums. And Michaela had sneaked back into the room and wanted to play by herself the drums, just experiment and see what was going on. If he had been hovering over and saying, okay, you hit it this way and this is what you do, she would have had none of it. But the fact that he went in and had dinner, but the drums were there, he had set the table by providing drums, she was fascinated enough to start experimenting with them and see what kind of music she could make. And he's really finding out a lot of things now because she's strong-willed and she wants to do things her way. So he has to learn to back off and do things for short periods of time where she still wants to do a little bit more of it. When he says, and that's what I think was so, when he says, oh, no, I've had enough, she starts pulling on him to do more rather than do it till the kid is sick and tired of it. You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a key, is to leave them wanting more, to set the table, don't force feed them, and to always leave them wanting more. They knew with Wayne and me, fortunately, that we had very little time for them as specifically at the club, because we were being pulled in so many different directions. So that made it precious. It made it really precious that they could get us out on the court and spend time with them. And they knew that we were willing to walk off the court if they were wasting our time with, yelling and screaming at each other. So just through practicality, they figured it out, how to get us out on the court and how to keep us out there. We weren't trying to figure out how to get them on the court and keep them on the court. They were trying to figure out how to get us out on the court and hit with them. And I think parents that, let's say, aren't, teaching at a club, but they play tennis, it's good to, maybe wait for the kid to ask them to take them to go out and hit some, rather than saying, okay, it's Saturday morning, we've got a court from 10 to 12, we're going to go out and hit some.
Right.
Just let the kid make that gesture on occasion.
I love that.
So it's just,
well,
it's
now
interesting.
Now that you have these two grandchildren and you're watching Bob, make his way through parenting, and it seems so far he's doing a great job. I got to meet Michaela, so darling. But so
where did you meet Michaela? I have to ask.
She was at the U.S. Open.
And, okay, sure, yeah.
She was with her grandpa Wayne, and I.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And I got to see Bobby, but he was kind of crashed in his stroller, so that's okay. But it was a lot of stimulus around him, but But so how is it now watching your son take on this parenting role, and how are you sharing advice with him? Is he seeking out advice, or are you just kind of relishing in this whole experience now?
Mainly relishing in it. Like I've said to Wayne a number of times, I get just as much joy out of watching Bob as a parent, and just watching the parenting, as I do out of the grandchildren themselves. I just love to see him experiencing this, and he's such a remarkable, warm dad, and he has such patience and so forth. So we try to, really not say anything unless they ask us. Like Bob did call yesterday. It wasn't specifically for this, but he did start talking about his experience with Michaela on the drums. And then, we'll put our input there. Oh, yeah, that reminds us of this, or, they're kind of like little flickering flames. Don't blow too hard on it or you'll blow it out, that kind of thing. But we try to let them really have their own experience. They'll come up with, some innovative thinking we've never thought of. And both of them, Michelle's phenomenal too. They're very dedicated parents, and everyone does have to kind of take a road to a certain extent that feels good for them. Our path was great for us, and we had to work it out along the way, but, every parent has different circumstances. They have, siblings at different activities, working parents. They all have different situations that you really have to seek that kind of angle of repose where it all works. It all works for your family unit. And I think one of the big things that worked for us was Wayne and I did a lot of talking, pillow talk, a lot, trying to always be on the same page with Mike and Bob. So in the instructional area, in behavior area, if we sense differences, we tried to really talk all of that out. So we presented the boys with a united, front, and that helped. I think just trying to crystallize our thinking with each other and getting it consistent.
Sure. Well, we're at the end of our hour, so I wanted to...
Gosh.
I know, it went fast, huh?
It did.
I know.
For me, at least.
We'll do it again, but I wanted to give you an opportunity if there's any last bit of advice that you would like to share with the tennis parents out there on any front, whether it's tennis or parenting or just life in general, because you have had such an incredible experience in your own family, and now watching your boys, both of them are now married, one is a parent himself, and so you have this wisdom and this experience behind you that I feel like we all have so much to learn from you. So
thank you.
Any last bits of wisdom you want to share?
I know when I had the twins, I always wanted them to feel like they were a joy to us, no matter what their accomplishments, whatever they chose to do, that they were a joy. Especially I didn't want them to feel like they were hard work when I first had them. I wanted to, just because they didn't choose to be twins, so I didn't want them to feel like it was a burden for us in those early years. So we tried to protect them from that, but always give them the feeling, because they are, but that they're a joy apart from whatever is going on in their lives, and that we're just so blessed to have them. And we've tried to, we've had hard times, we've had great times, but to be a safe harbor for them, that they know that they can always come to us, no matter what the disappointment is, no matter what they've done, that they're not, always proud of, that we are a safe harbor to come to talk about it, with, and we'll help them through it, whatever it is. We're on their side to help them work things through, not to necessarily rescue them, but to figure it out and to work through and learn from it. That we value them as human beings and their character and so forth, way beyond anything going on, on the tennis court. And I think that's what gives us so much satisfaction to see their lives now, see them as husbands and, how they treat others around them, see them as a father. Bob's a father, and possibly Mike will be in the future. To see those kind of values, moving to the next generation. So just having the joy. I think tennis can sometimes seem like a burden when you're going through the tough times. You go, why are we doing this? This is really heartbreaking. Shoot, we put so much time into this and we're not getting... And I don't think you can really... You've got to be enjoying every little step along the way as much as you can. Don't look too far ahead like, boy, he'll never get into college when he's in the, 14s. He'll never get that scholarship. Just be into what you're doing now and in trying to enjoy that as much as possible, making it a great experience with your kid, something that, you're sharing along the way, not for these ultimate, goals and achievements, pros, whatever it is, but it's the here and now, because it does go, as everyone says, and it's true, it goes so fast, and the time that you have with your child is so precious that nothing should get in the way of that being precious and a moment for, bonding and sharing, whatever experience you're having. You know this too, Lisa. I mean, you've traveled so much with Morgan that each one of those trips, whether you're getting great results on the courts or not, you want to try to make that a great trip, in some way, somehow, between the two of you.
Right.
And then it all just naturally evolves to where it's going. It's if it's going to be college ball or pros or it's just going to be high school tennis or just enjoying the game as recreational. It evolves naturally because you're just you're not forcing things along and just living for the future.
That's great.
Did I make that somewhat clear? That's what I think the bottom line is for us, and we've always felt with the boys.
Well, y'all
just
certainly
the joy.
Y'all have certainly found the joy in your family, and I will personally attest to how much fun you have together, and the way you all look at each other and the way you speak with each other, and it's a very unique, and I feel really honored that I got to be part of that for a day, and look forward to some more of those days. So thank you for sharing all of that with us today, Kathy. And
well, thank you, Lisa, for having me on, and you're a remarkable parent yourself, so we felt privileged to be around you and Morgan.
Well, thank you, and best of luck to the guys in their last couple of events, and world number one yet again at the year end, so congratulations to all of you for that. And
well, thank you.
Look forward to lots more years of the Bryan brothers.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks. And to my listeners, thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed today's show, and we'll share the podcast with your other tennis friends. And until next week, have a great time on the court. Thank you.